Hello everyone, I'm Lalita from Green Network Asia and welcome to GNA Insight, where we interview thought leaders on sustainable development issues ranging from social, environmental, governance and many more. Today I sit with Bushra Zulfiqar, a Pakistani woman who has successfully served in multiple international leadership roles in a career of spanning 20 years. She has studied from the London School of Economics on social policy and development and Harvard University, USA, on leadership and management. Bushra has worked with multiple international development organizations such as UNDP, the World Bank, and the UK government, as well as international NGOs such as Save the Children and Terre des Hommes Netherlands, where she is currently Regional Director for Asia. Welcome, Bushra. Welcome to Bali. How are you?
Thank you so much, Lalita, for your kind introduction. It's a great pleasure to be in this beautiful place. And I've really enjoyed being in Bali on my very first visit to Indonesia.
Oh.
Thank you for hosting me.
Let's talk about child exploitation in Asia. What is the context?
Asia has an immense success story when it comes to its economic growth. We know it's the fastest growing region in the world when it comes to GDP per capita or just the economic development in terms of modernization of infrastructure. So on the one hand, Asia has this shining, miraculous story of being the hub of technological advancement. But on the other hand, the children in Asia continue to suffer in multiple forms and they face serious risks to their safety and their well-being. Child exploitation is a huge challenge in the context of Asia. It is ingrained in negative socio-cultural beliefs and cultural practices which unfortunately are very detrimental to the well-being and development of children. It's everywhere and it starts even from the early ages of infancy right up to adolescence. And children in most contexts suffer in silence because it goes unreported. Asia is seen really heightened forms of online sexual exploitation of children with the growth of its IT industry and social media. So between 1 to 20% of all children in Asia have experienced online sexual exploitation depending on which country they are in. In 2023, the United States Center for Missing and Exploited Children received 105 million files of child sexual abuse content, which is primarily pornographic content. And it is heartbreaking to say that 3 of the world's most top hosting countries of that content are in Asia, which are India, Bangladesh, and the Philippines. It's a 3 billion to 20 billion US dollar per year industry. So financially, it's been a very lucrative business. That's why this week we have been talking to the financial sector and the finance industry providers as to what role they can play, because there are these countries which are working as hotspots for the promotion and dissemination of child pornographic material, including live streaming. It's important to acknowledge that this issue is rampant in Asia and it's everywhere. No country is exempted from it.
Earlier, you addressed potential stakeholders in this issue. Now, as stakeholders working for sustainable development, what do we need to understand about child exploitation so that we can address it specifically in the context of Asia?
It's very important to develop a shared understanding of child exploitation. So as a community of practice, we are better prepared to identify it, to tackle it, and to fight against it. Child exploitation is a global phenomenon. That's the first thing to remember. It happens across the world, but it has very specific cultural nuances and it varies from context to context, from country to country, and at times within the country. It's also manifested in the power imbalances that are a reality for children in their day-to-day lives, as well as socioeconomic and cultural factors which put children in a position of disadvantage. There are many forms of child exploitation that are prevalent in Asia, and one of the most common forms is human trafficking, of which children really are also suffering from. I would like to give an example of a recent study that was conducted by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, the UNODC, that found out that Malaysia and Thailand are the leading destinations of human trafficking from Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar. And 1/3 of the victims of this cross-border human trafficking are children. And these children are from really impoverished and deprived communities. And this trafficking often results in other forms of exploitation, whether that be prostitution or pushing children to commercial sex, or early and forced marriages, or indeed recruitment of children and minors as fighters in armed conflict when it comes to humanitarian and emergency settings. Child exploitation occurs when people take advantage of the power they have over children, either by virtue of their gender or other identity factors. It also happens often in the environment of a child which is trusted, or a child's network where children easily give their trust, often ending up in the hands of perpetrators. I cannot emphasize enough that it is a violation of fundamental human rights, as well as the rights of a child as enshrined in the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Despite the General Assembly resolutions of the United Nations and all these international legal treaties, there has been a lot of sophisticated growth in the IT sector, in the online gaming industry, and in social media, which has posed heightened risks to the safety and well-being of children. And therefore, as it's very important that at the ASEAN level, at the level of this region, we are all coming together to tackle the new forms of child exploitation that children are faced to with the expansion of the IT and technological growth.
You spoke at the ASEAN Conference on the prevention and countermeasures for the misuse of financial service providers in child sexual exploitation crimes. Can you elaborate how the financial sector plays a significant role in this issue?
Yes, indeed. So one of the key messages that I've given also at the ASEAN Forum this week is really for all of us to align all our efforts and to collaborate together so that all our children in all their diversity and richness can be protected and safeguarded from the horrors of child online exploitation that is taking place. Indeed, the financial sector has a really important role to play, and we have been speaking to leading financial institutions and organizations to form financial coalitions and alliances to protect and safeguard children. The financial sector can play a really important role when it comes to sharing vital information and intelligence. With the growth and evolution in the fintech, the financial technology, with the increasing use of international online payments, using e-wallets or cryptocurrency and what have you, there is a real need for international cross-border cooperation and collaboration to be able to trace and track suspicious transactions. Often the pedophiles and offenders have a specific pattern, so there are red flags to watch for. And we have had some really inspiring conversations with the law enforcement partners and with financial partners, including with the police and with the Interpol here, to talk about the scope of increasing international and regional cooperation in initiatives like joint investigations, so that the perpetrators can eventually be brought to justice. We've also discussed the need for survivor-centered support mechanism, so children who are at risk or indeed who are survivors have access to care that is trauma-informed, that helps them heal psychologically, mentally, and physically, and also provides them a safe space with the right legal aid, with the right support for witness testimonies, and also ultimately be treated with compassion, care, and dignity. So that's a range of instruments that the ASEAN is pursuing. But we definitely need to ensure that our policies are implemented on the basis of strong evidence. We have plans that are fully resourced and budgeted. And across ASEAN, there is the need for forming financial coalitions and alliances which are representative of civil society and child protection sector experts who can really work together to have the shared role in the fight against child exploitation.
The conference is specifically addressing the financial sector. So yeah, that's very, very interesting to know and very insightful as well. Now, let's talk about your organization, Terre des Hommes Netherlands. So how does your organization fight child exploitation in Asia?
So Terre des Hommes Netherlands is an international humanitarian child rights civil society organization. We are all inspired and committed to our new global strategy, the Listen Up strategy, which inspires us to be a catalyst for systemic change to fight child exploitation. We have 3 new thematic programs which are centered around sexual exploitation of children, fighting sexual exploitation of children, eradicating child labor, and also taking quality and principled humanitarian action when it comes to natural disasters and calamities. We believe that our organizational principles will help us move the needle and fight systemic inequality and injustice that children face, especially through making sure that we are following children's participation as a core principle by involving children in the design and in the implementation of our programs, by co-creating solutions with children, by recognizing children and young people as experts in their own right, and by helping to draw sustainable long-term solutions hand in hand, working closely with children. We are also working very hard to ensure that we are taking into consideration the power imbalances and the intersectionality that is faced by children on a day-to-day basis in multiple forms and layers. And lastly, we are doing all this to ensure that there is transformative change in the lives of children and their families and the communities that we serve, so that they can hold duty bearers to account and they are empowered to make a positive change in their own lives. This is easier said than done, but we are very committed to operationalizing our global strategy in our Asia region. This is a real opportunity to engineer the positive change that we want to see in the lives of children, and we are working with strategic partners to work together and really work with the sector, taking an approach where we are actually using our collective strengths to advocate for systemic change and national policies and laws that best address the issues faced by children.
Child exploitation is such a hard subject. It's a difficult subject to touch on, to discuss, even to bring it up in formal settings. That's why fighting child exploitation needs a lot of strength, courage, determination. As a woman in a leadership role, how do you keep yourself going?
That's a really good question, Lalita. Thank you for asking that. As you say, it's very difficult. There's no two ways of saying that. Oftentimes you're talking about life and death and situations where horrible things happen to children, extreme injustice and gross violations of their rights, and one is constantly trying to find ways to get through those situations and be of support and service to those children. It can take a toll on your own mental and emotional health, and it's really important, therefore, to seek out for positive inspiration. And I do that on a regular basis. I seek out for those moments of positivity, inspiration, and motivation that help me going and that give me the energy. And if you want to look out for identifying those positive influences, I don't think you have to look far and hard, because they're everywhere, all around you in your day-to-day life, as long as you have an eye for finding those and identifying those. And I'll just give you an example. Very recently, I just happened to stumble upon the interview of one of Pakistan's leading and most successful fashion designer, Hassan Shahryar Yasin, known as the HSY, and I'm sure people here in Bali would know him as well. And of course, I have nothing to do with the fashion industry. I work in a completely different field. But what I saw in that interview was a man who has overcome unimaginable challenges and struggles in his path to power and excellence, and the success and the name that he's been able to create for himself, that nobody else can touch him. And that interview really moved me because he spoke about his experience when at the age of 17 he lost his vision in both his eyes and he became completely blind for 2 years. And someone to hit that rock bottom, but then have the perseverance, the commitment, and the dedication to climb up the ladder one step at a time and build this humongous empire for himself. That story really, really moved me and had a positive impact on me. And it made me think, A, what an extraordinary mother has raised this boy with such a solid set of values. And secondly, a real inspiration. And it made me feel, you know, I have no reason to give up and I have to keep fighting the good fight. So I often find such positive influences in my environment, and they help me keep going, they energize me and give me the strength to go on even in the face of such life and death situations and stories of human suffering that I come across every day.
That's very inspiring indeed. Yeah. Thank you for coming here, Bushra. Thank you for this delightful conversation. It was really nice talking to you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I think Bali is, in so many ways, it reminds me of my home city of Rawalpindi in Pakistan. So I've also felt the warmth and just the wonderful, good-natured people in Indonesia have been extremely forthcoming and supportive. So I really thank you also, Lalita, and to your team for this wonderful opportunity.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.